Patriots, Steelers by 6. The total 30. So the projected, or the implied, I should say, score for this game is a barn-burning 18-12 Steeler victory. I mean, this is just yuck. I mean, I don't know how we're going to top. So last Thursday, we had the 5th game in NFL history without a punt. This week, we may have the first game in NFL history that's like a scoreless tie in overtime. Just 70 minutes of scoreless football. Like, that's not out of the question. So we could go from one extreme to the other. Yeah. But assuming yards are gained and points are scored, who do you like to gain and score them in the captain's spot?
Maybe he's not going to gain them, but I'm going with Chris Boswell.
Right.
He's going to score the points.
So that's your captain?
Screw it.
Took my play.
Okay. No, never mind. I was joking. Actually, this slate, anybody's in play, including the kickers. Well,
yes, absolutely.
Boswell specifically. But I'll go with a more normal play here. Najee Harris. Although he did miss practice today, it could be more maintenance related, so I'm not too concerned about it yet, but something to monitor. But, just when it looked like Jaylen Warren, the guy I have like in every league, looked like he was going to leapfrog him. Najee's put together a couple solid games. And he did this last year where he struggled in the first half of the season. Then the second half, he really turned it on. Pittsburgh leaned on him heavily. He was way more efficient. So we're kind of seeing a repeat of that this year. But I think this is a game where it would make sense for them to just lean on him. It's going to be a low-scoring game where Pittsburgh should be able to lean on the run. And he is the best bet for a touchdown here. In a game like this, at the total of 30, touchdowns are always necessary to take down a showdown slate, but they're even more at a premium here. So there's a chance he could score a touchdown and be the only touchdown scorer. So I like using him in the captain slot. I think there's a ton of options, basically all on the Steelers side for the captain slot, but I'm going to go with Najee here.
I mean, you know me. I'm always going to go try, at least not always, because if there's a Dolphins game, I'm taking Tyreek. But I'm going to try to go contrarian a little bit when I can. And so you kind of mentioned it. I think the Steelers are probably going to be probably the 3 or 4 most popular plays are all going to be Steelers, because you have Najee, you have Warren, you have Deontay, you have Pickens, and you have Freiermuth. And hey, maybe I'm sure people will mess with the defense with this. This Patriot team can't score, so I think there's going to be a lot very popular for the Steelers. If you ask me, a little too popular for a team that itself is only projected to score 18. So I like Zeke in the captain spot, and the reason is this: Najee, Warren, Pickens, Deontay, all those guys, it's all you're essentially trying to figure out how it's going to get split up, right? Whereas there's a decent chance Zeke plays 90+% of the snaps. He had 94% of the non-Ramondre Stevenson snaps last week. Ty Montgomery, who usually is a wide receiver, played 3 snaps at running back. This week, I'm sure they'll have Jermichael Hasty active, who they acquired from the Jaguars a couple weeks ago. But either way, this Patriot team, they haven't shown really any interest in using anyone else in the backfield outside of Zeke and Stevenson. They really have been, it's just been a 2 running back team all year. So you have a chance for Zeke to kind of get the same workload of Najee and Warren combined. And the Patriots are a great run defense. The Steelers are kind of average, and they're more of a run funnel. They're top 6. There's 6th in DVOA against the pass, but 15th against the run. So I do like Ezekiel Elliott, who I think will be popular, but I think a lot of people will use him in just the regular spot in their lineup because they're gonna captain a Steeler. So I do think there's some value here on Zeke, who could get 20, 25 touches, because this Patriot offense at this point, they're forced to just run the offense through the running back. So 17 carries, 4 receptions last week, 92 scrimmage yards. So, and especially on DraftKings, you might not even need to score to still, get to, 20 points or so. So like Zeke is a little bit of a contrarian play. Not that I think he won't be popular, but I don't think he'll be as popular in the captain spot because everyone's going to try to find that right mix of Steelers. So give me Zeke. Who do you like in the mid range for value?
Well, I don't know if it's mid range, but I'm going with Deontay Johnson. He's one of the higher priced players. But there's not too many great options here. He's slightly cheaper than George Pickens, and I do think he's a better play in this spot. I'm with you on my weekly ranks. I have Deontay outside of my top 40. He's not a great play this week, but he has decent chemistry with Trubisky. Once Trubisky took over, he was targeting Deontay at a pretty high rate. And the Patriots play man coverage at an above average rate. I think it was top 6 after last week, and Deontay, he's averaging 4 yards a route run against man, which is the 3rd highest in the league. So, that does give him some reason to play him here. But, it's going to be a game where they'll probably be a little bit more conservative, take more shorter throws. I can't imagine them throwing it deep to Pickens too much here. So, out of those two, I would go with Deontay. And then you could probably still afford a pretty good team. This isn't a game you really have to go cheap. So that's why I'm going with Deontay as my value play.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options here. This is a fun slate. Like I said, it's such a low scoring. It's such a low scoring projected game that there might only be one touchdown, if that. I mean, we saw the Patriots play a game last week where there were no touchdowns, it's just 2 field goals. So,
yeah.
I mean, that was a game where having a guy like Zeke too would have been been important. But like Deontay could be like your Keenan Allen in that game last week. For me, I like the Steelers a lot. The Steelers D in this spot. They're pretty expensive, but when I look at my projections, the Steelers defense is right there with all the position players this week. Even the quarterbacks, because New England is allowing over 12 DraftKings points per game to opposing defenses. They've been shut out twice. They've given up 1 to 6 points 3 times, or they've scored 1 to 6 points 3 times, I should say. And then they scored, below 14 once more, between 7 and 13. So half of their games, they're giving you at least a 4-point bonus just on points allowed alone, before accounting for sacks, turnovers, or anything like that. So I think it's a high floor play, and on this slate, I think it's actually a high ceiling play because it's such a low scoring game. If there's a special teams or defensive score, that could be it for this entire game. So this is one of the rare spots where I'd actually consider playing defense in the captain spot in a couple of spots, just because of how low scoring we're projecting this game. So like the Steelers defense here, going against what it sounds like Bailey Zappi with a banged up receiving core, and now without the guy who's been carrying them on offense in Ramondre Stevenson. Where are you going for dart throws?
I'm going with either Ty Montgomery or Jermichael Hasty. I'm not quite sure which back will be the main pass catching back. So, right now I'm leaning Ty Montgomery just because he's been there the longest, but it wouldn't shock me if Hasty ends up being, the main pass down back. But maybe we have a better idea closer to kickoff. But I would think targeting either of these backs would just be a nice dart throw in this game. They're more likely going to be spelling Zeke on passing downs. I think he's going to dominate pretty much every early down snap. But I think just since it's going to be a potential trailing game script, that should help too. So one of those receiving backs, and then I don't know what's up with Malik Cunningham. Like, they keep saying they're going to have a package of plays. Has he even had a snap at quarterback?
He did in his first appearance, but not in the most recent one against the Chargers.
Yeah,
I think against the Raiders he did. I think it was the Raiders. Whatever game he appeared in, like another game before this, and he did have like 2 or 3 snaps at quarterback. He didn't. He had in the last game he didn't play.
Yeah, well, I mean,
play an offense, I should say.
He's 6K, so I mean, if we're talking dart throws and just a shit slate, I mean, there's a chance they put him in there. And in preseason, when he was playing quarterback, I mean, he's out there to scramble. He was just racking up rushing yards, so it wouldn't hurt to just try something out like that. So he could easily end up, 3 or 4 points here, maybe become the quarterback. So just a wild ass dart throw, he might be in consideration if they do finally give him some playing time.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. So whoever is the Patriots' number 2 quarterback in this game, because the Patriots have benched their quarterback so many times, I think, if it's Mac Jones, I think Mac Jones is actually in play as a dart throw as bad as he's been. Yeah. And if it's Malik Cunningham, I think even though the prices are high for a quote unquote dart throw, I do think, in a slate like this, again, because we expect it to be so low scoring, you have to consider, okay, well, maybe, Pittsburgh is up like 10 or 13 nothing and Zappy's doing nothing and they go back, they bench him and maybe the backup comes in and throws a touchdown and then, almost nobody has him. So I wouldn't limit myself to just the Patriots starting quarterback. I mean, it's not, the projections aren't too different. It's like close to 0 and close to 0 for both. But I think Montgomery will get in the game ahead of Hasty only because Montgomery's been active every game this year for New England. And he's been there. He was there last year too, I believe. Whereas, Hasty just got here a couple weeks ago and has been a healthy scratch. So I'm leaning toward Ty Montgomery in this spot.
Well, if anything, they have like 5 receivers that are questionable. If like 3 or 4 of them are ruled out, they might need Ty Montgomery as a receiver, and JaMychal Hasty will be the pass catching back.
That is true. So yeah, it's definitely something to monitor. But assuming they have, at least like 4 healthy receivers, I do think they would. Montgomery would obviously be available to play receiver, but I do think they would use, just because Hasty's been a scratch. That's essentially, because I thought they would finally start activating true running backs when they got Hasty, but nope. But I like Montgomery. I mean, because if Montgomery, let's say the receivers are hurt, then Montgomery kind of has two-way upside, right? Like dual threat upside. He has upside as a running back, and he has upside as a slot receiver. So I kind of like almost like a Cordero Patterson type. So I think he's intriguing. But for my dart throw, I'm going Calvin Austin III. He is 2,400, so pretty cheap on DraftKings. And New England, they've been pretty good recently against the pass, but on the year, they're still 23rd in pass defense DVOA, 32nd dead last against non-top 2 wide receivers. And that's not surprising because we know the Patriots have long tried to make opponents play left-handed, limit as many of their top options as possible, and force you to, go to your ancillary, supporting role players. And in the 2 games since Matt Canada was fired at offensive coordinator, the Steelers have doubled their deep attempt rate, their deep pass attempt rate. It has gone from 8.3% in the first 10 games to 16.7% in the last 2 without Canada. And then Mitch Trubisky is attempting nearly twice as many deep passes as Pickett per attempt. On the season, Trubisky 16.3% deep attempt rate, Trubisky 8.6. So Calvin Austin, he has seen about a third of his targets come on the deep ball. So he can do that. He's also, he's seen a bunch of little underneath targets as well, but he has the speed to get deep, and they are throwing downfield a little bit more. And, I don't think anyone's really expecting Calvin Austin to do anything, but if he does get a 70-yard touchdown, for example, in a game where you're not really projecting many touchdowns, that kills a whole drive of potential, receptions and yardage gain for other players. So you get a lot of leverage, not aside from points. If he hits, you get a lot of leverage, more than you get from a dart throw on, let's say, like a Dallas Philly type of game where, even if you get somebody who scores like 10, 15 points at close to minimum, there's still going to probably be 5 or 6 guys that scored, 15, 20 plus. So really like a guy who can just hit a home run on this slate. And the Patriots don't really have any of them, but Calvin Austin, I think, qualifies for the Steelers.
And he's the punt returner. So if you play him and the Steelers defense, you'll get the double dip if he returns a touchdown. Low chances of that, but sometimes that's what it takes to take down one of these showdown slates.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens and that's a 12-point touchdown right there, that might be it.
Game over. That's it.
Like this is a situation where even though we're talking dart throws and cheap guys, because Calvin Austin, I think he scored on a 70+ yarder earlier this year. Let me double check that.
Punt return or
no,
receiving?
I think it was a pass.
No, yep. No, I had over 2.5 receptions, and he had 2 for 150 yards or whatever.
Nah, it was not quite that much, but it was 2 for 72 and a touchdown. Yes. But if he gets a punt return though, and you have him stacked with the defense, that's a 12-point touchdown. Now imagine that's the only touchdown.
Yeah, no, that's game over.
This is a slate where even your dart throws, you have to consider them in the captain spot, like the defense, a guy like Austin, because let's say he gets 72. It's simple, just another 72 and a touchdown, like he did in week 3 against the Raiders. That he may be the highest scoring player on the slate just with that. So this is that kind of slate where you kind of got to get creative here. You don't have to use all your salary. That's another thing I should mention.